So yesterday there was a vote in the House of Representatives for a stopgap measure that would avoid a government shutdown. It has to get passed in the Senate. We talked to Congressman Schweikert this morning, and we're going to talk about why he voted against it, and I'm going to fill you in. So what ended up happening as far as the Arizona delegation goes, it was Congressman Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, Paul Gosar, and David Schweikert that voted against. But it was Congressman Juan Ciscomani, the Republican. He was a Republican that voted for it. All of the Democrats in the Arizona delegation voted in favor of this stopgap measure. So I talked with Congressman Schweikert this morning, and he informed us. He said, originally I was a yes vote on this.
2 hours before the vote, I was going to vote for it. We basically lost a month of our lives when we should have been grinding through the appropriations bills. And remember, one of the reasons it's taking so much longer this cycle is because we're breaking down the appropriations bills line by line, and we have open rules. When Speaker McCarthy took over in January, we opened up the rules. So Democrats, Republicans, everyone gets to offer amendments now, unlike in the past.
So I neglected to say that Congresswoman Debbie Lesko is also one of the no votes on the Republican side. But Congressman Schweikert said the deal that they make and what ends up happening when you want amendments and they can be granted, everybody gets to take a look at this. In order to get Democrat support, there were things added into this that he disagreed with. So in the end, he said, all right, you've gone further than I'm willing to go. I'm going to now be one of the no votes. But they did have enough yes votes to pass. So what it has accomplished, he was not arguing with. It was what they had to give away in order to get it that he disagreed with. So I asked him, what does this measure? What does this actually do?
We have this piece of legislation to continue funding authority in a couple terraces where, these parts of government expire on this date, so hopefully you have to finish the appropriation bills, and then these expire beginning of next year. Hopefully you finish the appropriations bills.
Here is what's at issue in my mind. This happens a lot. I've been doing this for quite a while now, which means I'm immersed in it. And there's a lot of people that are not immersed in it, and they hear the headlines and they're concerned about things, and when something happens, they respond to it. But this happens a lot. And when these threats happen, everybody gets so terrified about a government shutdown. People in the government don't want the bad reputation. Republicans and Democrats aren't sure who the American people are going to blame more, especially entering into an election year. But they have these tools at their discretion, and one of them is this continuing resolution, where they can continue to fund the government as they're doing things now as a stopgap measure until they come to an agreement down the road. So the idea that they're just going to have two choices, either make a deal or shut down, is not the case. And once again, they've kind of kicked the can while they have the negotiation. What's different now, and what I believe is the final kind of maybe straw for the American people, is when you hear about the debt, when you hear about the number 2 expenditure for the federal government is going to be interest, not the debt payments, the interest that we are paying on our debt. It's more than defense spending. It's $1 trillion a year. The American people intellectually understand, this is both Republicans and Democrats understand, no individual, no company can have that kind of debt and be considered a solvent, productive, healthy company. And so what does the American government do? And Congressman Schweikert was talking about going line by line through the appropriations bills and does this program really need to exist? But what ends up happening is we will hear the phrase, we are balancing the budgets on the backs of poor Americans. And that's just not the case. It's one of those talking points. We are either going to rein in spending or we're not. We're either going to cut spending. Imagine this. I want you just to imagine this. A family doesn't pay its mortgage because they are so far in debt they can't pay their bills, so they don't pay their mortgage. But they are spending money on other things. Their kids are still getting piano lessons, and they're still going to class trips. And let's say your child has a class trip planned to D.C., and instead of telling them they can't go to Washington, D.C. on a class trip, you don't pay your mortgage. And the mortgage company says, well, wait a minute. You're spending all this money on this other stuff. you definitely should be paying us instead. And you try to say to the bank, I'm not going to balance my family's budget on the backs of my children. They would laugh in your face. It's about being fiscally responsible, and our government has not been for a long time. Both parties. It's not just one party. I've been critical of my party as well, and the huge amount of money we spent. This is, again, you get thrown under the bus when you do it. You get thrown under the bus when you don't. You just have to be honest about things. During the Trump administration, we ran into COVID-19. Look at the huge amount of money we spent on the development of the vaccine and to fast track that vaccine. Worth it or not, two sides of the aisle, parts of the argument, but we all understand that's the argument. But what about the COVID relief money, the PPP loans, and the huge amount of fraud? Am I blaming Donald Trump specifically for that? No, but it's the Trump administration. So now we're seeing the same thing in the Biden administration. Was it necessary to get something done during COVID? Yes, it was. Could it have been done better? Should it have been done better? Should we have avoided fraud in different ways? Absolutely, we should have. So it's both sides of the aisle that have done this to one degree or another. This huge amount of debt, this waste, this overspending, the redundancy, and all of the other things. At some point, the American people, not me as a Republican or you as an independent or a Democrat, us as Americans have got to say our government has got to get their fiscal house in order, or this country, as great as it is, as powerful as our economy is going to suffer huge damage. And we're right at that point. We'll see if the American people do it. We will see if the American people do it.